I am sorry, what exactly do you do again? That condescending question came from Derek Lawson, our newly appointed Chief Operating Officer, during a quarterly operational efficiency review at Innovate Clean Energy Solutions in downtown Columbus, Ohio. He said it with a thin smirk, as if I were a ghost that had accidentally wandered into his sleek digital presentation. My name is Raymond Miller. I am 54 years old, and officially my title was Senior Federal Grant and Compliance Administrator. What I actually did, day after day for 7 long years, was keep this corporation from drowning in federal red tape, regulatory penalties, and contract cancellations. While executives like Derek paraded around in custom slate gray suits, pitching investor decks packed with 3-syllable buzzwords, I was the solitary worker who ensured their technology platform possessed a legal framework to operate under. Without my initials on 7 distinct federal compliance forms every quarter, their clean energy initiative was nothing more than expensive digital noise. Nobody paid attention to me when things were running smoothly. That was by design. My job was like the braking system in a high-speed vehicle, unnoticed until the exact fraction of a second you desperately need it. I started 7 years ago as a temporary compliance auditor. During my very first week on the job, I caught a critical date mismatch on a filing submitted to the United States Department of Energy. I flagged the error, corrected the administrative documentation, and submitted the revised disclosure. 2 weeks later, that simple correction saved the firm a mandatory $150,000 penalty. The chief financial officer simply handed me a permanent security badge and said, "You are staying." I stayed through 3 corporate acquisitions and 2 major restructurings. For every government award our engineering team secured, I constructed a compliance paper trail so tight it could comfortably withstand a full Senate audit. My corner cubicle featured filing cabinets organized like tactical battle maps, complete with color-coded sticky tabs, cross-referenced sub-award matrices, and a small ceramic frog with googly eyes sitting beside my keyboard. Rubbing that frog before every quarterly federal compliance submission was pure superstition. But in 7 years, we had never missed a single government deadline. Then came the $10 million funding milestone. A complex matrix combining state sustainability grants, a regional clean tech grant, and a crucial rural energy infrastructure initiative that I had personally fought to secure over 18 exhausting months. When the federal notification letter finally cleared, I placed a small yellow note on my computer monitor that read, "You built this." That quiet pride was all I required. People around the office occasionally called me the funding whisperer. It was half joke, half truth. I did not merely track grant expenditures. I possessed an intuitive understanding of federal bureaucracy. I knew which grant officers insisted on technical attachments and which rigid deadlines would instantly revoke funding if missed by 60 seconds. I wore the same simple leather shoes for 3 straight years. My navy cardigan showed wear around the elbows. My coffee mug carried a chipped rim, bearing the modest phrase, "World's okayest employee." Yet when board members questioned why a quarterly disbursement had failed to post, they did not call the chief financial officer. They called me. When project managers panicked over missing environmental impact approvals, I already had the stamped documentation stored in 3 distinct physical folders, including one labeled, "I told you so." I did not host grand strategy meetings, I resolved them. My technical grant narratives read like compelling monographs, seamlessly weaving complex engineering data with federal policy objectives under Title II of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 200. I played the corporate game quietly and flawlessly, then Derek Lawson arrived. 34 years old, sporting immaculate white teeth and loud silk ties, Derek walked into our corporate headquarters like a stage magician equipped with a fresh spreadsheet. He promised the board he would eliminate operational bloat, boost gross margins, and sunset legacy positions. That phrase, legacy positions, stuck in my throat like a bone. When his finger reached my department on the organizational chart, he simply tapped his tablet screen and announced, "That position is an administrative cost center." Grant reporting can easily be automated using modern artificial intelligence tools. He pronounced automated as if it were a magic spell, as though a generic computer program could effortlessly navigate complex federal databases, resolve conflicting agency guidelines, and manage encrypted government portals. I merely recorded a brief note in my leather journal. Derek Lawson does not understand regulatory compliance. I waited patiently because I possessed knowledge he lacked. Hidden within our primary $3.2 million federal clean energy contract was a specific, unyielding legal clause I had drafted 2 years prior, a clause so dry and technical that corporate lawyers had skimmed right past it. It was titled the Key Person Clause, and it was about to dismantle Derek Lawson's career. The email subject line, announcing the review, was corporate anesthesia. Upcoming all hands, operational alignment, and resource optimization. The all-hands meeting was scheduled for Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock, which meant only one thing. Derek was about to swing the corporate axe. Derek strutted into the conference room wearing a slate gray suit and a wireless earbud. "We are entering an aggressive phase of hyper-lean restructuring," he declared, rattling off jargon. "This company's survival depends upon organizational agility, digital automation, and cost realignment." The projector illuminated a slide labeled Legacy Roles Review. Derek advanced through slides showing bold red strikeout lines. Redundant administrative functions will be transitioned or eliminated. If a procedure can be digitized, we digitize. If a human role can be streamlined, we optimize. On slide 12, I spotted my department, federal certification filings, automated workflow pending, narrative progress reports, template integration, sign-off matrices, departmental reassignment. No name was listed, just abstract administrative workflows itemized as though I had already been converted into a spreadsheet record. I raised my hand calmly. "Quick technical question," I said. "Has an enterprise software solution been authorized to handle multi-factor authentication for the Department of Energy portal?" That portal utilizes encrypted security tokens tied to a single validated primary administrator. Derek dismissed the question. "We are currently vetting several digital platforms. Tech integration will handle it." Returning to my cubicle after the meeting, I opened the third quarter compliance folder and discovered draft narrative files bearing unfamiliar initials. Tyler Barnes, a junior finance analyst with zero background in government contracts. Moments later, an automated calendar notification flashed. Transition support meeting, conference room C915. Inside conference room C, HR Director Pamela Briggs sat looking uncomfortable, while Derek Lawson leaned back with a tablet. "We deeply appreciate your contributions, Raymond," Pamela began. "This decision aligns with our strategic corporate realignment," Derek added smoothly. "Consolidating your compliance duties under finance saves approximately $200,000 annually in human bandwidth." Human bandwidth. The phrase made my blood run cold. $200,000, I repeated softly. "I suggest you ensure whoever inherits my responsibilities understands the third quarter authentication protocol," I added flatly. "Federal portal credential resets require 10 business days, and late submissions trigger automatic audit reviews." Derek blinked, failing to grasp the warning. I signed the exit paperwork without another word and walked out, knowing that while Derek was counting paper savings, a fuse had just been lit underneath his career. The atmosphere inside an executive offboarding meeting possesses a distinct clinical chill. Sitting across from Pamela Briggs and Derek Lawson, I watched two people execute a corporate termination with mechanical detachment. Maintained fixed eye contact with her desk calendar. While Derek manipulated his tablet screen, displaying my severance documentation. "This transition significantly optimizes our operating budget," Derek remarked, leaning back in his chair. "Compliance software has evolved. We simply no longer require dedicated human bandwidth at your compensation tier." Hearing my career reduced to human bandwidth confirmed everything I needed to know about Derek's philosophy. He viewed organizational governance not as a web of legal obligations, but as a game of reducing headcount to inflate quarterly earnings. Pamela pushed a thin blue folder toward me. "Finance will absorb your administrative responsibilities effective immediately. We have allocated a standard 2-week severance window alongside accrued paid time off payout and standard non-disclosure terms." Derek offered a faint, self-satisfied smile, expecting me to plead for my job. I did neither. I picked up the stylus, executed the digital signature, and slid the tablet back across the wooden table. I signed because I possessed full clarity regarding what lay ahead. The regulatory clock was ticking, and every second Derek believed he had saved was bringing his department closer to a catastrophic legal reckoning. You will want to ensure your new compliance lead thoroughly reviews the federal grant renewal conditions, I remarked in a calm tone. Specifically the administrative key personnel requirements. Derek blinked twice, his face blank. Pamela typed a brief note without looking up. I stood up, buttoned my cardigan, and exited conference room C. Returning to my cubicle, I initiated my personal offboarding. I did not delete databases or corrupt spreadsheets. I was Raymond Miller, a seasoned professional who understood that true accountability did not require active sabotage. It merely required stepping aside and letting incompetent executives face the unyielding weight of federal law. I packed my ceramic frog, my chipped coffee mug, and a single notebook into my briefcase. Before logging out for the final time, I pulled a thick manila envelope from my desk drawer. It contained a comprehensive physical printout of every active federal grant timeline, agency contact list, and milestone schedule through the upcoming fiscal year. I placed the envelope in the very back of the metal filing cabinet, sliding it behind a stack of archived tax audits where nobody would find it unless they explicitly knew where to look. I omitted all security passcodes, encrypted tokens, and portal credentials. Those access rights belonged to me, and under federal cybersecurity guidelines, sharing master administrative credentials was strictly prohibited. Walking toward the glass exit doors, I passed the desk of Tyler Barnes, who was busy customizing a colorful Excel dashboard. I offered him a silent nod. The only employee who truly acknowledged my departure was Howard Davis, our night custodian, who was pushing his cleaning cart down the hallway. Howard was a veteran who had worked at the facility for 12 years. "Heading out early today, Mr. Miller?" Howard asked, stopping his cart. "Heading out permanently, Howard," I replied, extending my hand. Howard shook it firmly, his weathered face showing genuine surprise. "That is a real shame, sir. This building will not run the same without you around here." "Take care of yourself, Howard," I said with a slight smile, "and keep an eye on the breakroom coffee maker." "Always do, Mr. Miller. Best of luck to you." I walked through the revolving doors into the late afternoon chill of Columbus. Sitting inside my sedan, I rested my hands on the steering wheel and listened to the engine. My pulse was completely calm. I felt no anger or panic, only the cold anticipation of a mathematician who has calculated an undeniable equation. Derek Lawson believed he had just eliminated a $200,000 administrative expense. What he had actually done was execute a material breach of a multi-million-dollar federal contract. 2 years prior, during negotiations for our primary $3.2 million federal clean energy grant, I had personally authored Section 3.4B of the agreement. The clause was titled Key Person Designation and Mandatory Pre-Approval Protocols. It explicitly stated that the continued participation of Raymond Miller was deemed essential to the technical governance and compliance integrity of the funded research. The contract stipulated in unequivocal legal language that any termination, reassignment, or removal of the designated key person without prior written notification and formal authorization from the federal granting agency constituted an immediate material breach of contract. Furthermore, under Title II of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 200, Federal Grant, recipients are legally required to request prior written approval from the federal awarding agency whenever there is a change in key personnel specified in the application or award notice. Failure to secure prior agency approval empowers the United States government to initiate immediate enforcement actions, including the complete freezing of awarded funds, mandatory clawback of previously disbursed capital, and permanent debarment from future federal contracting. I had drafted that clause with extreme precision, utilizing dry statutory language that corporate attorneys routinely ignored as standard boilerplate. I included it as legal insurance, a structural firewall designed to prevent impulsive executives from treating federal compliance officers as disposable line items. Derek Lawson had not read Section 3.4B. He had simply looked at a payroll spreadsheet and swung the axe. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I looked in my rearview mirror at the gleaming glass tower of Innovate Clean Energy Solutions. They believed they were hyper-lean and optimized. In reality, they were already in breach of federal law, and the clock was ticking down to zero. 3 business days after my departure, Derek Lawson officially transferred all grant management responsibilities to Tyler Barnes. Tyler was 22 years old, possessed a newly printed business degree, and wore a smartwatch that vibrated every 20 minutes to remind him to stay hydrated. Eager to impress his new superior, Tyler began his tenure as compliance coordinator by issuing a company-wide email with an overly cheerful subject line, Optimization Notice, Streamlined Grant Workflows. Attached to his email was a blank Excel spreadsheet containing 0 regulatory formulas, 0 milestone tracking links, and 0 historical audit references. Tyler had completely discarded my compliance matrices, assuming he could replace 7 years of institutional knowledge with basic grid formatting. Department heads stared at the blank spreadsheet in confusion, but nobody raised an objection. Derek had assured the board that compliance operations were now fully digitized under central finance. By the end of his first week, however, Tyler hit a brick wall. The quarterly narrative progress report for the $3.2 million Clean Energy Grant was due to the Department of Energy in less than 7 business days. Tyler opened the government portal website, only to discover he did not possess master administrative access. The portal required a secure digital security token tied directly to my validated government credential set. Tyler attempted to guess the master login credentials twice, triggering an automated security lockout. Panicking, Tyler bypassed internal protocol and drafted an email to our assigned federal grant administrator. Writing from his corporate email account, Tyler typed what he intended to be a polite request. "Hello, I am taking over grant reporting duties from a recently transitioned team member, Raymond Miller. Could you please assist in resetting the master administrative portal credentials for Project 4839 so I can upload our upcoming quarterly report?" Tyler had no idea he had just pulled the pin on a legal hand grenade. In federal grant administration, one does not casually request credential transfers for a key person-protected contract via an informal email. That is the administrative equivalent of contacting the Pentagon to request new launch codes because the previous officer left the building. The response from the Department of Energy did not arrive in Tyler's inbox. It was transmitted 48 hours later directly to the personal portal of Walter Henderson, General Counsel for Innovate Clean Energy Solutions. The subject line was chillingly formal: Urgent Inquiry, Unreported Personnel Reassignment and Material Award Review, Project ID 4839. The federal letter was short, precise, and devastatingly clear. It has come to the attention of the awarding office that Mr. Raymond Miller, designated as key person under Section 3.4B of Award 4839, has been separated from your organization without prior written notification or formal agency authorization as mandated by Title II of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 200. Please submit immediate written clarification regarding the date of separation, the justification for non-notification, and a formal petition for key personnel substitution for agency evaluation. General Counsel Walter Henderson, a veteran attorney who usually spoke in calm tones, reportedly stopped breathing through his nose when he read the communication. He immediately forwarded the letter to Derek Lawson with a forward message: "My office. Right now." When Derek entered the legal office, he found Walter standing by the window, holding a physical copy of the original grant agreement. "What is this about, Walter?" Derek asked, maintaining his swagger. "Some federal clerk is making a fuss over a routine password reset for the grant portal." Walter turned slowly, his expression utterly grim. "Did you fire Raymond Miller without consulting legal counsel?" "We eliminated a redundant administrative position," Derek replied smoothly. "We consolidated his functions into finance to save $200,000 annually." Walter threw the grant contract onto his desk with a heavy thud. "You didn't save $200,000, Derek. You just triggered a $3.2 million federal clawback." Derek scoffed, taking a seat. "Government agencies do not claw back millions of dollars over an administrative oversight. We will just file a retroactive amendment form. Walter picked up the contract, flipped to page 14, and read section 3.4B aloud. Designated key person, Raymond Miller. The continued active leadership of Raymond Miller is deemed critical to contract execution. Any removal, reassignment, or termination of designated key personnel without prior written authorization from the federal awarding agency shall constitute an immediate material breach of contract, subjecting the award to immediate suspension, complete clawback of disbursed funds, and award termination. Walter lowered the paper and stared directly at Derek. This is not boilerplate, Derek. Raymond Miller explicitly wrote himself into the federal contract as the sole key person. By terminating him without prior federal approval, you place this entire firm in active breach of federal law. Derek's confident posture faltered. Why didn't anyone flag that clause before? Because Raymond Miller was the person who managed compliance, Walter snapped. He was the firewall. You marched into his office, called his position redundant, and threw him out the door without reading the contracts he was protecting. Before Derek could respond, Walter's desk phone rang. It was the chief financial officer. The Department of Energy had officially placed an administrative freeze on all pending grant disbursements. $2,400,000 in expected capital transfers were instantly locked, vendor payments were halted, and payroll accounts for 2 clean tech research teams were thrown into immediate jeopardy. The formal detonation had occurred. By Monday morning, Innovate Clean Energy Solutions had devolved into absolute corporate panic. The executive 5th floor resembled a command center under siege. Glass-walled conference rooms were filled with sweating executives, frantically reviewing contract schedules, financial projections, and federal regulatory manuals. The primary government portal screen, displayed on the massive monitor in the main boardroom, glowed with a persistent red banner: Key Person Certification Inactive, Account Locked, Compliance Audit Pending. Tyler Barnes sat in the corner of the boardroom, trembling, while corporate attorneys grilled him regarding his emails to the federal help desk. I was just trying to reset the login, Tyler stammered. I didn't know there was a special legal clause. You didn't know because you were a junior analyst who shouldn't have been handling federal compliance. Walter Henderson shouted, slamming his laptop shut. General Counsel Walter Henderson had spent 96 continuous hours attempting to engineer a legal escape hatch. He had drafted 4 separate retroactive amendment petitions, submitted emergency administrative appeals, and attempted to contact senior officials at the Department of Energy. Every single attempt was met with the same unyielding bureaucratic response. Under Title II of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 200, prior written approval is mandatory. Retroactive key person substitutions are explicitly denied. The firm was facing a mandatory clawback of $3,228,000 in previously disbursed capital, along with immediate disqualification from $10 million in pending state and regional grant renewals. BARD Chairman Harrison Croft convened an emergency board meeting at 2 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon. Harrison sat at the head of the mahogany table, glaring silently at Derek Lawson while Walter presented the legal assessment. So let me summarize our situation, Harrison said, his voice terrifyingly quiet. Our chief operating officer fired a 54-year-old compliance administrator to save $200,000 in annual salary. In doing so, he violated federal grant regulations, triggered a $3.2 million federal clawback, froze our operating accounts, and put our entire company at risk of bankruptcy. Is that accurate? Harrison, we can still negotiate this, Derek interjected defensively. We can hire an external consulting agency to handle the federal filings. Harrison slammed his palm onto the table. Shut your mouth, Derek. You didn't just break a rule, you destroyed our regulatory foundation. The government doesn't want an external agency. They want the named key person on the contract. Harrison turned directly to Walter. How do we fix this right now? Walter took a slow breath and slid a single sheet of paper across the table. There is only one legal remedy. The Department of Energy will consider lifting the clawback and unfreezing our funds if, and only if, Raymond Miller is immediately restored as the active key person on the award, with full administrative authority over compliance governance. Silence blanketed the boardroom. Derek looked as though he had swallowed glass. "Rehire him?" Derek whispered. "That would completely undermine my organizational authority." Harrison looked at Derek with pure contempt. "Your authority is currently worth negative $3.2 million, Derek." Harrison immediately pulled out his personal phone. "Walter, draft an email to Raymond Miller immediately. Get him back in this building at any cost." At 4:15 that afternoon, I was sitting on the back porch of my suburban home, enjoying a fresh cup of dark roast coffee and reading a novel when my personal laptop chimed. An email had arrived from Harrison Croft, board chairman of Innovate Clean Energy Solutions. The message was short, urgent, and stripped of executive swagger. "Dear Raymond, we urgently request your assistance regarding an administrative matter concerning our active federal grant awards. Recent organizational transitions have created compliance challenges that require your immediate expertise. We would welcome the opportunity to discuss your return to the organization under highly favorable terms. Please let us know your immediate availability for a discussion." I read the email once, took a slow sip of my coffee, and smiled. I did not reply immediately. I let the email sit unanswered for 3 full hours while the afternoon light faded over Columbus. Let them sit in the dark, I thought. Let them feel the exact weight of the panic they so carelessly inflicted on others. At 7:30 in the evening, I typed a 2-word response. "What terms?" The reply from Harrison Croft arrived in less than 90 seconds. "Name your conditions." The following morning, I transmitted a formal PDF document titled Terms of Engagement, Raymond Miller, Independent Compliance Consultant. My terms were absolute, uncompromising, and non-negotiable. First, I would not return as a W-2 employee under Derek Lawson's operational hierarchy. I would operate strictly as an independent executive consultant. Second, my compensation rate would be set at $350 per hour, triple my previous effective hourly earnings, with a guaranteed minimum retainer of 40 hours per week for 12 months. Third, absolute regulatory authority over all federal grant filings, portal certifications, and agency communications would revert exclusively to me. Fourth, I would report directly and exclusively to the board of directors, completely bypassing the chief operating officer. Fifth, executive management must execute a formal written acknowledgement confirming the absolute validity and necessity of the key person clause in all corporate grant contracts. Sixth, full reimbursement for all lost wages and legal consultation expenses incurred since my termination. When Derek Lawson read my terms during an emergency board conference call, he reportedly flew into a rage. "This is extortion," Derek shouted. "He is demanding triple his pay, complete autonomy, and a direct line to the board. If we accept this, my position as CO becomes completely meaningless." Harrison Croft answered in a dead-flat tone. "Derek, your position became meaningless the moment you fired the only man holding this company together. The board unanimously accepts Raymond Miller's terms." On Thursday morning at 8:30, I arrived at the corporate headquarters of Innovate Clean Energy Solutions. I wore a sharp, tailored navy blazer, polished dress shoes, and carried a slim leather briefcase. Walking through the front glass doors, I was met not by security, but by General Counsel Walter Henderson and Board Chairman Harrison Croft. "Welcome back, Raymond," Harrison said, extending a hand with genuine respect. "Thank you, Harrison," I replied smoothly. "Let us resolve this regulatory situation." They escorted me to a spacious, private executive office on the 5th floor, complete with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Columbus. Sitting on the mahogany desk was a brand-new corporate laptop, an encrypted physical security token, and an executed copy of my consulting agreement bearing the signatures of every member of the board of directors. I sat down, opened the laptop, and connected my encrypted security token to the system. I navigated directly to the Department of Energy portal interface. The glowing red lockout banner was still active across the screen, key person certification inactive. Award status, under audit review. I entered my master credentials, executed the multi-factor biometric authentication, and inputted the validated key person security code. With a soft chime, the portal interface refreshed. The red audit banner vanished instantly, replaced by a vibrant green confirmation box. Key person certification active. Raymond Miller, regulatory compliance status. Satisfactory. Within 4 minutes of my authorization, the automated federal system generated an official confirmation letter. Administrative audit paused. Disbursement freeze lifted. Project ID 483.9 restored to active status. The $3.2 million clawback was formally halted, the frozen operating funds were released back into the corporate accounts, and our $10 million grant pipeline was restored in full. Harrison stood behind my desk, watching the screen up. He let out a massive sigh of relief, leaning against the window frame. "Unbelievable," Harrison whispered. "You fixed in 4 minutes what our entire management team couldn't resolve in 2 weeks." "I didn't just fix it, Harrison," I replied, closing the laptop. "I prevented a catastrophic regulatory liquidation." At 10 o'clock, Harrison convened a mandatory executive meeting in the main boardroom. Every senior officer was present, including Derek Lawson, who sat at the far end of the table, pale, silent, and thoroughly defeated. The smug confidence that had characterized his tenure as chief operating officer had completely evaporated. Harrison stood at the head of the table. "I am pleased to announce that Raymond Miller has officially re-engaged with our firm as Senior Independent Compliance Consultant. Through his immediate intervention, our $3.2 million federal grant award has been fully restored, the administrative freeze has been removed, and our regulatory standing with the Department of Energy is completely secure." The board members around the table broke into genuine applause. Derek sat motionless, staring blankly at his tablet screen. General Counsel Walter Henderson then stood up, carrying a thick blue binder. He looked directly across the table at Derek Lawson. The room fell completely silent as Walter spoke in a dead, flat, deliberate voice that echoed off the glass walls. "Derek, during our initial efficiency review, you informed this board that eliminating Raymond's position represented a $200,000 annual operational savings. You referred to his technical expertise as redundant human bandwidth. I have spent the last week reviewing our federal contract exposure." Walter paused, opening the binder. "Did you read the key person clause before signing his termination paperwork?" Derek swallowed hard, his face turning bright red under the fluorescent lights. I skimmed the contract summary," Derek stammers, his voice barely audible. "I assumed regulatory compliance was boilerplate administrative work that could be automated." Walter slowly closed the binder with a sharp thud. "In corporate law, Derek, assuming regulatory compliance is boilerplate is called gross negligence. Your failure to read Section 3.4B cost this firm hundreds of thousands of dollars in emergency legal fees, nearly bankrupted our research divisions, and exposed this corporation to immense fiduciary liability under Title 17 of the United States Code and federal acquisition regulations." Harrison Croft stepped forward, his eyes cold and unyielding. "Derek Lawson, by unanimous vote of the Board of Directors, your employment as Chief Operating Officer is terminated effective immediately. Your dismissal is executed for cause due to gross negligence and breach of fiduciary duty. Security will escort you from the premises." Derek gasped, standing up so fast his chair rolled back into the wall. "For cause? You cannot terminate me for cause over a contract dispute. I will sue this firm." "You are welcome to try." "Derek," Walter replied calmly, sliding a thick stack of documentation across the table. "Our legal team has documented every single warning Raymond Miller gave you, alongside your explicit directives to bypass regulatory protocols. A lawsuit will simply place your negligence on public record." 2 security guards entered the boardroom, standing silently beside Derek. Without another word, Derek picked up his leather portfolio, surrendered his executive badge, and was escorted out of the building, passing the very cubicles he had attempted to optimize out of existence. Later that afternoon, I sat in my new 5th-floor office, finalizing our updated federal compliance matrices. I opened the master portal administrative settings and embedded a new permanent security firewall. Under the revised governance protocol, any attempt to alter, reassign, or remove key person authorization required dual key authentication from both the primary compliance officer and the federal awarding agency. No corporate executive would ever be able to bypass federal law in this company again. I reached into my briefcase, pulled out my small ceramic frog with googly eyes, and placed it prominently on the corner of my mahogany desk. Beside it, I set my chipped mug bearing the words, "World's Okayest Employee." My phone buzzed with an incoming text notification from my bank. My initial retainer deposit had landed, a substantial multi-thousand-dollar transfer reflecting my new consultant rate. I took a slow sip of hot coffee, looked out over the skyline of Columbus, and smiled. In the corporate world, reckless executives often believe they can cut corners, ignore expertise, and replace human dedication with empty software buzzwords. But bureaucracy has a long memory, federal law has sharp teeth, and cold justice does not arrive with loud applause. It arrives in a quiet room, with an unyielding clause, a locked portal, and a 54-year-old expert who knows exactly how to enforce the rules.